one of the topics, like super specific, that I've kind of been tackling is like core and abs. And it kind of dawned on me while I've been writing some of this stuff that a lot of times in fitness, there's kind of, it can be sort of pushed in fitness that there's kind of one way to do stuff. And it kind of aligns with that gym, that specific gym or that person's training philosophy. So whether it's CrossFit or interval training or cycling or yoga, most of the time,
like one way and nothing else, basically.
yeah, like that gym, this is how we do fitness, and this is the way that you need to do it, and let me show you how you need to do it for like eternity. Yeah, that's one of the biggest things that I've taken.
Yeah, eternity is a long time to be doing only one thing, especially because your body changes throughout eternity.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but so what were you specifically thinking about? I mean, you kind of already mentioned to me this idea of like, we get pigeonholed into one thought with the ab thing, but where are we going with that? What does that mean for people?
Yeah, I think fitness, like for abs, it's like this very specific thing. And if you want to know exactly what I'm talking about, you can read the blog tomorrow.
I will.
Yeah, generally for fitness, I kind of look at it and term it like for maybe some people would be offended by it, but I don't really give a shit, is fitness evangelism. Like that makes sense. Yeah, dogma for sure. So the way that I see it is that if you're in a place and you're in an environment where I think the coaches in the gym are comfortable with who they are and what they kind of bring to the table in their philosophy, and it's well thought through, that they understand on some level that everything kind of works if it's applied to the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
As opposed to the other side of it, which is only one certain thing works. And before we pressed record, we kind of talked about it a little bit, which for the CrossFitter who's training for the open, kind of the fitness enthusiast, as it were, is training loosely to get better in the CrossFit Open every year, if that's like the general goal or benchmark at which that person gauges themselves by. They don't, surprise, surprise, like you don't have to do fucking CrossFit all year in order to get better at the Open. Matter of fact, if you do CrossFit all year to prep for the Open, your ass might not be doing the Open at the end of the year.
Yeah, highly
likely. You may be like in a fucking body bag.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because before we pressed record, we were talking about this, and I didn't even remember this, but like it brings me back to, the early days of the gym and kind of like thinking about all of the different ways that we programmed for the groups, because in groups, like we have to make it work for everybody, and everybody is of different skill levels and different ages and different sizes and different experience levels. And I just remember at the beginning, just programming CrossFit all the time. And when I say CrossFit, I mean like Metcons and cleans and snatches and overhead squats and random numbers without much rhyme or reason. And I stumbled on this guy named Kenny Kane. If you ever heard him, he owns CrossFit LA. Now he does. And he had this video on like the 8 essential movement patterns. And like walking was one of them, and running. And I was like, and it just kind of blew my mind. Like, walking is one of the essential movement patterns. And it's funny because then right before we hit record too, I was talking about how I just came back from this trip, and it's like I've been thinking more about how much more walking people should be doing after they do, let's say, 3 days of strength training. They really don't really need much more strength training than that. Like it'd almost be better to just do some walking or get outside. So I didn't even remember that this Kenny Kane thing like really informed how we programmed at the gym. But it's a good example of what you're talking about, like you don't get too dogmatically stuck into just one thing, especially with CrossFit. You're going to hurt people.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
mean like snatches and kipping pull-ups aren't one of the essential movement patterns?
Yeah, kipping pull-ups definitely not. Yeah, who I think he may have put muscle ups in there.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, sweet. It was just permission. No, man, it was like walk, push, pull, squat, hinge, single leg, run, jump, you know? And it's like,
And then how? So then you saw that, and then how did it change? So you were like using like old school, like wrecking people with like CrossFit, like benchmarks, like we're
yeah,
gonna do Fran and Grace, and then you saw that, and then it changed like how?
it changed like, there was not really an organized structure. It was like, let's say every Tuesday was clean day, every Thursday was snatch day, every Wednesday was a benchmark, like a Grace or a Fran. Every Friday was, a chipper. But that's not really an organizational structure, and that's all just CrossFit. It's like there are all these other things that people needed. Like, for instance, people need to do slow stuff like isometrics, hold a position and just get good at holding a position like a wall sit or a plank. And that doesn't really fit anywhere in like the CrossFit framework. I mean, we know people are doing it to train, but if you watched CrossFit YouTube videos, you'd never see it. And it's kind of what you were talking about earlier. It's like someone will go to a yoga studio, let's say, or a, I don't know. I don't mean to badmouth because I don't think any of these things are bad, but it's like they'll only do yoga. And at at that yoga studio, you'll never be given a medicine ball, and it's important to probably do something like a medicine ball vertical toss once in a while, because in yoga, you're not going to do a lot of hip extension. If you do, it's going to be like a stretch. It's not going to be like an extension contraction kind of thing.
Yeah, the world would probably be a better place if more CrossFitters did more yoga and
Sure.
more yogis did more like CrossFit.
Yeah, damn right, right? It's not that's the message, right? I think what we're getting at is like if more people did put their, dip their hands in more things instead of just going to one thing and focusing on just that, and I guess what we're saying is like, here's permission to do 2 days a week CrossFit or 3 days a week CrossFit, but also go to your Pilates class, but also go do a hike 1 day a week, but also ride a bike, like that's going to be a much better recipe. I think we both agree for the average person who's looking to get healthy. If you're trying to be go compete at the Festivus games like Jason Addis, like you shouldn't be necessarily doing that, but for the bulk of people, yeah.
Yeah, normal people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I think a lot of times too, what we end up doing for exercise kind of reinforces like our strengths, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily going to go if I've been in the past like yoga and Pilates, I'm probably less likely to go join like the CrossFit or like the strength and conditioning gym up the street and vice versa.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right? Like we stay in our comfort zone. It's intimidating to go to a place where everyone knows what they're doing and you feel like the only person who doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
No, I think that that's kind of the thing that I've seen when I was a younger coach. I look back and I was the same way, right? I was like, well, I found CrossFit and I was like, well, this is the thing that you kind of have to do, and forgot about all the other things that you have to be good at if you're gonna do what was known at that time as CrossFit.
Yeah.
That there are all these other things that you kind of had to. There were like these boxes that needed to be checked off, and what CrossFit did was kind of like fast track people through all that stuff, right? The assumption was that Joe Schmo could just walk in off the street and could just by him like getting out of bed and like breathing, he could automatically do like advanced gymnastics in Olympic lifting. Until like 3, 4, 5 years down the line, we're like, oh shit, we haven't seen that dude in like 2 years, man. What happened to him?
Well, that's funny, and that brings to mind kind of a funny story, man. Like in the first location of the gym in 2015, my uncle and my aunt were like, my family lives in Encino, so they were really supportive of the gym. So my uncle and my aunt come to some classes, and it's like one Friday or Saturday, I have handstand push-ups programmed in. And my uncle's 40, he's 56 now. He must have been 51 at the time, maybe 50. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, I don't think he should be doing handstand push-ups, but I wasn't experienced enough at that time to really connect it. I hadn't gotten the experience. And he goes up, he's like, no, I'm going to try it. He goes up to invert, kick up against the wall. And the first thing he does, like, he kicks up, his shoulders give out, and he just lands on his neck. And I'll never forget that, man. Like I laugh now only because I'm laughing at me, not at him, like it was a shitty position to put him in. I felt terrible. I learned never to do that again after that day. Lucky me, it was like 2 months into the gym, or 3 months.
Yeah.
And he's still been supportive of the gym, but he's never come back for a workout. And I don't blame him, and I don't think it's not because there's some anger at me or the gym. It's just, you get in a bad position and bad things and something bad happens, you don't trust. So but I just remembered that as you said that exact story. It's funny.
Yeah, and it's tough is a coach, you're watching an onlooker do that, or you're watching someone who doesn't necessarily have all these years under the belt in the gym try and do something like that, can't do it, and you're thinking to yourself like, oh man, why the fuck did I just have him do that?
Yeah.
Like I just forgot like what else you had to be able to do in order to do that.
Yeah. And it's like he was a fit guy to begin with.
It's scary to think like, what are they thinking about it?
Yeah.
Are they thinking like, man, Eric shouldn't have had me do that? They're probably not thinking that. They're probably thinking like, holy shit, like I suck. I should be able to do a freaking handstand.
Well,
like
afterwards, they're probably thinking that. Afterwards, they're probably like, fuck, man, I wish Eric hadn't had me do that. But during it, they're probably like, okay, I should be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.